Welcome back to Tales Arcane. Should you fudge your dice rolls? In this video I'm going to explain how I approach this issue and why my position on fudging has changed a bit over the years. I'm not going to claim that my approach is objectively better than anyone else's, I'm just going to share my experience with this subject in case it proves helpful to other GMs, especially those who are new to GMing. By the way, this video is sponsored by the Arcanium Infinitum Kickstarter. Arcanium Infinitum is a book of 160 illustrated items, 8 new subclasses, 8 mini adventures, and a lot more. In addition to the book, the creators are also doing physical and digital item cards, which I personally love. Getting a shiny card with a new item image on it and all the relevant info is such a satisfying reward at the end of an adventure. The creator behind this project is Arcane Affinity, who I've been following for a while now, and their artwork is always top tier. My personal favourites from the Kickstarter are the Tidehunter Ranger artwork and the Way of the Eternal Flame Monk. Now, if you're curious about the adventure portion of the book, they actually have a free sample adventure available on their Kickstarter right now. It's got some awesome items and monsters, great artwork. It really just shows you the caliber of what's on offer here. Now, this Kickstarter is coming to an end on the 26th of June, and they're getting pretty close to their funding goals. So if you want to make this project a reality, head to the link down below this video and back Arcanium Infinitum on Kickstarter. A massive thank you to our friends over at Arcane Affinity for sponsoring this video. So what is fudging a dice roll as a GM? Essentially it means rolling the dice, ignoring the number that comes up, and just saying your own number. Ideally, the players won't know that you've done this, but you've essentially removed the element of randomization from the GM side of the table. A game master can fudge their dice for all sorts of reasons. They might roll the attack of a monster, realize that the resulting damage will probably be too much for the player to handle, and will then pretend that the monster missed, because they don't want their level 1 player to die during the first session. Less forgivably, a GM might use fudging as a way to railroad players, or even give a monster an unfair advantage in combat. Let's imagine a scenario in which a major boss battle breaks out. The GM has been planning this for ages, but the players use magic to cleverly remove the boss from action early on in the combat. Maybe it's hold person or hold monster, and it all comes down to a saving throw on the part of the monster. The monster rolls a nat 1, but the players don't know that because the GM rolled the dice behind the GM's screen. So they just say, oh, it was a 19 and the monster passed. Fudging is a divisive topic in the TTRPG community. For some, it's a useful tool to shape the flow of the game and ensure that the players have the best possible time. For others, it's an overreach on the part of the GM that fundamentally undermines the principles of chaos and randomization that underpin TTRPGs. Now, where do I come into this? Well, I do not fudge dice rolls, but I used to. When I started out as a GM, I wasn't good at balancing combat. I didn't really know the mechanics that well, and I wasn't quick on my feet when it came to improvisation. But I really wanted my players to have a great time, to keep coming back, and so, from time to time, I fudged dice rolls. Whenever I fudged a dice roll, it was almost always during combat, and it was almost always to offset the fact that I balanced the combat encounters poorly because I was a new DM and I didn't really know how to balance things. Also, I was playing Dungeons & Dragons, and Dungeons & Dragons balancing can be a little bit shaky at times. Now, crucially, the players didn't know I was fudging rolls. I was quite good at fudging rolls. And that's an important point, because if you do it in an obvious way and the players know you're fudging, of course that is going to kind of ruin their experience. As with most things, if you do it badly, it will yield bad results. Of course, I saw people online talking about why fudging was bad, but most of the complaints I saw were predicated on two assumptions. Firstly, that the players were aware that the fudging was happening, and secondly, that they were having a worse time because of the fudging. So I said, well, my players don't know that I'm fudging, and they seem to be having a great time, so why stop? Here's what I learned as I became a more experienced GM. The number one person who was having a worse time because of me fudging dice rolls was me. I was understandably scared to embrace the chaos early on, but the less I fudged dice rolls, the more interesting and engaging my own GMing experience became. I stopped being an outside agent floating above the players and always knowing roughly what was going to happen next. Instead, I was down on the ground with them at the mercy of the dice rolls, feeling pretty much just as tense as they did every time we went into combat. When my players defeat a boss at the end of a hard-fought session, my heart is racing and I'm punching the air along with them. We're all celebrating because none of us were sure how things would pan out. The story can take such interesting twists and turns when you fully embrace chaos and you don't know what's going to happen, and you and your players are both shocked by the outcomes. But there's something else we need to acknowledge here. I stopped fudging dice rolls, but the number of player deaths and TPKs at my tables didn't suddenly skyrocket. I embraced randomization, but sessions still played out roughly as I hoped they would. There was no sudden uptick in the number of boss battles being prematurely ended by the hold person spell, and that's because as I was phasing out fudging, I was also getting better as a GM. Dice rolls were more random, but I was better at balancing. Things were unpredictable in the sessions to a much higher degree, but I was a lot better at improv and I was prepping a lot more effectively, so I was never really caught off guard. My younger self, starting out as a GM, really benefited from having the training wheels of fudging, just in case things ever got wobbly. And my players definitely had a better time for it because A, I was doing it for the right reasons, and B, they didn't realise when I was doing it. And the important thing is that training wheels are useful at the start. I just think that over time, they have to come off, or at least if you do take them off, you're going to become a better GM as a result, or bicycle rider in this analogy. All that to say, in my opinion, when you're starting out as a GM, fudging dice rolls can be a very useful technique, and the people who tell you should never fudge dice rolls are potentially forgetting just how difficult it can be to run a game of D&D or any other complex rule-heavy TTRPG when you're just starting out. And again, if you're doing it for the right reasons, you're doing it because you want your players to have a really good time and you don't want your mistakes and inexperience to get in the way of that, I really don't think that's a problem. It certainly wasn't a problem for me. The important thing, again, in my opinion, is that over time you learn to move away from that, because not only will not fudging just make you a better GM because you'll be having more experience improving and dealing with the unexpected, but it will also just give you way more fun, unexpected experiences. The best memories I have of running games have always been the moments that really shocked me, where I didn't know what was going to happen, the players didn't know what was going to happen, and we found out together. If you're a GM who fudges dice rolls from time to time and you want to try and break out of that habit, a great way to start is by running one-shots, where you don't feel too bad if all the players die prematurely. That's what I did. I ran one-shots, and over time, because I was rolling the dice more randomly, I started to realize that I was enjoying the one-shots more than I was enjoying things like combat in my regular games, where I was still fudging from time to time. If you want to go really hardcore, you can just tell your players that, oh, you know, I couldn't find my DM screen, so we're just rolling all the dice out in the open. The moment you start rolling important dice rolls out in the open is the moment you start having those really thrilling, adrenaline-fueled moments at your table, where everyone's craning in to see how the dice falls. That's why they do the box of doom in D20. It really does work. I hope this video was helpful to someone. I hope this video maybe inspired you to go away and try to embrace the chaos after starting out with fudging in your early GM career. And if you disagree with me, if you think I'm dead wrong, tell me in the comments. I am always interested to hear other perspectives on this because, as I say, my own perspective has evolved over time, and also it drives engagement, and we love a little engagement around here. Also, if you do want to back the wonderful sponsor for this video, the Arcanium Infinitum Kickstarter is linked below this video, and yeah, go over and support some fellow D&D creators making some great content. I'll see you in the next video.